at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, February 18th at Lebanon High School in the Herman B. Wells Community Center. This meeting is a meeting of the school board in public for the purpose of conducting the school corporation's business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. There will be time for public participation as indicated by the agenda. The meeting site is fully accessible. Any person requiring further accommodations should contact the superintendent at the Lebanon School Corporation office. And before we start the meeting, I would like to have a moment of silence in remembrance of Jenny Gaha, who taught here for over 30 years, biology and AP classes, who died last week. All right, thank you. We remember her family and friends tonight. All right, if you are a student, if you wouldn't mind standing up first and helping us in the Pledge of Allegiance, you can lead us from your chairs.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We do have a quorum and all school board members are present. Mr. Hendricks, the mission statement.
Yes. Lebanon Community School Corporation challenges everyone every day to reach a new best.
Thank you. In your background notes, there are minutes from the regular meeting on January 21st, and then the executive session. Can someone make a motion to approve the minutes from those meetings?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Parks. Second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right. Superintendent's announcements and celebrations.
Thank you, Mrs. Hutchison. Just congratulations again this meeting for several of our groups. Our wrestlers who went on from sectional to regional competition. You have in your background notes the sectional winners as well as the regional winners went on to semi-state from that competition. So congratulations to them for a strong season again and all the hard work that they've done as they rounded out their season. So just a moment to congratulate them. We have also in your background notes from our band department, kind of a rundown of our solo and ensemble participation from this last go around. You can see that we had 67 total gold and silver and bronze medalists that performed in solo and ensemble. So we congratulate them for taking a risk. Our winter percussion ensemble is doing very well. They've won their second competition in a row. They won again in Norwell High School last Saturday. So you have a photo of that group. And I understand that the Charisma also was champions at Ben Davis in their class over the weekend as well. So congratulations to our fine arts. And just sharing with the board that this evening I held my first remote office hours with the staff. I'm trying something a little new this year. Last year I went to the schools on Friday mornings and met with the staff, kind of just whatever was on their mind. But this year I thought, well, maybe we'll increase participation if we take the sessions to them. So I had my first session this evening or this afternoon at 4:15. We'll do the same topic. This time I'm going over our enrollment forecast. We sometimes forget that we spend time here and I spend time in the public, and our staff sometimes needs a update as well and some time to hear that. So we're going to choose a topic each month and allow folks to attend virtually and ask questions about topics that might be of interest to the staff. So just sharing with the board that we started that this week, and that's all I have for my announcements.
Okay. Thank you so much. We're moving on to informational items, and we have school construction and renovation update.
We skipped the Tiger.
Oh, I'm sorry. We did.
Yeah, honored guest out here.
I am so sorry. We have Dr. Millman, Tiger
Yes,
Pride.
We're going to ask Mrs. Dennis to come forward, and we'll honor our Tiger Pride champions for 2 months, yes, January and February.
Good evening. We are proud to recognize students that earned a Tiger Pride Champion Award in January or February. The award is designed to nominate and select students who take pride in themselves and in their school. The Tiger Pride Champion Award celebrates individual achievements by recognizing students who demonstrate persistence, respectfulness, initiative, dependability, and efficiency. The following students were recognized at the respective schools in front of their peers, but we are excited to recognize them again here tonight at the school board meeting. Students, please come up to get your certificate when your name is called. We will also take a group photo at the end. From Central Elementary, Nelson Huang and Ian Holloman. From Harney, Ryan Fouts and Hudson Munoz. From Hattie B. Stokes, Ashi Gupta and Maya Barnes. From Perryworth, Addison Dibner and Logan Burfield. From Lebanon Middle School, Clara Wright, Audrey Cooper, Anderson Stump, and Charlie Johnson. And from Lebanon High School, David Zybart, Riley Vanneman, Ricardo Mbuko, and Hannah McKinney. Congrats to all of our nominees.
Make sure we don't forget anything. All good? We'll hang out here a couple more minutes. Good job, guys.
Well, thank you, students and families, for coming tonight. You're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, but if you would like to exit, we will give you a couple minutes to do that. All right, now we will move on to our school construction and renovation update. Mr. Dennis?
Thank you, Mrs. Hutchison. Do have a small item this evening regarding construction. As the board knows, constructing a new transportation facility, and the plan all along has been to sell our current transportation facility. No action regarding that item tonight. However, I did want to update the board. We did receive our 2 appraisals. As the board recalls, we are obligated to accept no less than the average of 2 appraisals, and that average came back at $339,000. As a part of this process, and I will certainly share with the board our intended sale, we did move our our lines, our property lines slightly to retain a little bit of the parking lot for our service center where our buildings and ground staff is located. And as a result, we do have to get that entire property replatted. We had to create Lot 9A. Lot 9A does not exist right now. That's going to be administratively replatted by the City of Lebanon. And we also do have to file a variance with the Board of Zoning Appeals. Those lots are all less than 5 acres, and we were grandfathered in when we were utilizing those lots for a commercial purpose. But in the meantime, an ordinance was put in place that commercial lots must be at least 5 acres. Since we are going to convey this to a new owner, it is our responsibility to get that variance of a small lot basically resolved. We are on the BZA for, we just missed the March meeting. They meet the first Monday of every month, and we just missed the March meeting. So we'll be on the April meeting. But what I will be bringing to the board in March, the legal requirements that we have for selling a property is it must be posted in the paper. We have to run an ad. And so I'll be formally requesting the board's permission to run that ad, which would officially kick off the sale of some of our real property that we own. But did want to update the board as we did get that appraisal in just this morning. And so that is where bidding will start on that. So I wanted to update the board with that. I guess I can turn it back over to you, but it's going to come right back to me for the next two, actually. So
Right, go right ahead.
Okay, no, I don't want to run your meeting here, but legislative updates is next. I did want to share with the board, there has been a lot of publicity lately with school funding as it pertains mainly to property taxes. Wanted to bring this to the board's attention tonight. The first iteration of Senate Bill 1 featured a true cut in property tax revenue to units of local government, and as things tend to do, that caused quite a stir. Many media outlets ran this story, which communicated for Lebanon Community School Corporation a loss of anywhere from $3 million in fiscal year 26 all the way up to more than $5 million in fiscal year 28. There was losses to counties, redevelopment commissions, really every unit of local government. That bill was amended shortly before it was taken into its final hearing, before ultimately being voted through onto the floor, to feature no longer a loss in revenue, but a freeze in revenue. So I wanted to share with the board that the current iteration, the amended version of Senate Bill 1, what that would look like for us here locally is our operations fund levy must remain stagnant for next year. So the issue with that is we always talk about how much of our budget is people. And when you factor in the education fund, certainly a large portion of our expenditures, in fact, more than 80% when you factor in the education fund referendum and the operations fund, is salaries and benefits. But when you distill that down to the operations fund, many more of our volatile expenditures live in the operations fund. Diesel fuel, for example, we have no control over that. Property and casualty insurance premiums, we have no control over how much those increase. Utility increases, certainly things that we don't have control over. And so the prospect of frozen revenue in that fund is, by no means is it terminal for the school corporation. We have a cash balance in that fund. We have other mechanisms such as the transfer from the education fund to the operations fund, but merely wanted to share with the board this evening where the current iteration of Governor Braun's property tax reform sits. Governor Braun is on record as early as 2 days ago saying that the amended version is not acceptable. It does not offer enough property tax relief. So I don't know where the House will take that next, but that was the Senate's iteration of Governor Braun's. It was a big portion of his campaign is to provide property tax relief. The other bill that I wanted to share with the board this evening is what's affectionately known as the budget bill, House Bill 1001. As a part of House Bill 1001, they release what's known as a funding run for every single school corporation. 2 years ago, the board will remember a separate appropriation being created for curriculum materials. No more were schools to charge parents for book fees. That was a $160 million appropriation that was included in the budget. It appears through House Bill 1001 this year that the House prefers to roll that $160 million into the foundation. So there will no longer be a separate appropriation for curricular materials. You will just get it in your per student funding. I bring that up because the current run has Lebanon Community School Corporation increasing by 2.4%. That's the increase in revenue per student for next year. But we'd be remiss if we did not include the $157 that is baked into that for curricular materials. So in effect, that should be subtracted from that revenue increase because that money was already in the state budget and we were receiving that revenue from elsewhere. When you factor that in, that 2.4% increase changes to a 0.5% increase for Lebanon Community School Corporation per student in fiscal year 26. The increase for Lebanon Community School Corporation for fiscal year 27, so not next school year, but the school year after, remember budgets are always 2 years, that was a 1.4% increase for LCSC. When you pull out that $157, it becomes a loss of $10 per student from next year to the following year. Early still in the legislative season. I'll stop saying it's early in the legislative season, probably next school board meeting. That will not be the final iteration of House Bill 1001, but it seems the flavor of lawmakers now is to eliminate that appropriation for curricular materials, just put it in to the funding formula, which I will say I don't necessarily disagree with. It becomes there's a report that we have to prepare for that is cumbersome, and so at that point they're just making it a local decision. What does any school corporation want to do as far as adopting curriculum, and they give you your materials to go to war with, and you make local decisions at that point. Again, don't necessarily disagree. I disagree with the $160 million appropriation. It proved for 2 years in a row that it was not enough. The state ran out 2 years in a row, and so everybody received a reduced amount. But just wanted to update the board on what has come through as far as funding, and it does provide a good segue into our final informational item, but a lot of information right there. Happy if the board has any questions to respond to any before we roll into our next item.
I will let you know that 1001 is being heard tomorrow in the House, so I will be there to watch it.
So
Yep.
We'll have our
Senate
associations
Bill-
there as well.
Senate Bill 1 talks about setting a levy, correct? Keeping the levy. Right now, what you said, they're saying.
Operations fund levy can
Operations.
increase by 0% in fiscal year 26, by 1% in fiscal year 27, and 2% in fiscal year 28.
Any word on the operational referendum?
So no movement at this time to change that law. The main focus in terms of referenda so far in this session has been to yet again amend the question. It doesn't apply to us because we have no intentions of seeking a new referendum at this time, and there will certainly be another long session before we think about putting a referendum back on the ballot. There was a cooling off period, so if a school corporation ever failed in a referendum, they could not turn around and put it on the next election, and they also had changed it to, and I think this will pass, general election only in even number years will be school corporations' options for placing a referendum on the ballot.
There was also a provision in the early version that when your operating referendum expired, you had to wait a year. And I believe that did not get traction enough, but I think in that last amended bill, so that was not part of it. There was a cooling off period from if one failed, but one that was even more troubling was your revenue would essentially stop for a full year after it expired. So I think that language did not make it through to that last amended version as well. So there's other bills as well that affect school boards and of course public schools. So if you have any questions, as always, reach out to Mr. Dennis or myself. As you know, I continue to forward you or at least try to highlight sometimes in my articles if I do that, and my weekly notes to you. It's a lot to digest, I know, with all of you and your daily work to try to keep up. So I will continue to try to pluck out some highlights for you to make it a little bit easier to digest, but reach out to us at any time and we'll answer any of your questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Dennis? Thank you.
Perfect. Again, as I mentioned, perfect segue into our final informational item this evening. With a freeze in operational revenue, we will have to start as a school corporation looking at ways to curb expenditures. It's just that's what will need to happen. It's what happens with any entity when revenue goes through a troubling time, I will say. So with that, I'll go ahead and have Mr. Bob McKinney come up. We back last spring, this board authorized Bob McKinney with Stratalign to conduct a feasibility study for energy conservation measures. As I mentioned, utilities are a $1.3 million expenditure from our operations fund every year. It's over 1/10 of our expenditures every year. And essentially, we tasked Mr. McKinney, and this is what Stratalign does, is they conduct feasibility studies to seek opportunities for school corporations to experience and realize energy savings, and no better time than now with the current tone coming out of Indianapolis and property tax revenue and the shrinking of property tax revenue. I will say, Board, no action regarding this tonight. What I will do at the end of this presentation and the questions that you may have for Mr. McKinney, I will ask you for your permission for Mr. McKinney to release an RFP for Lebanon Community School Corporation to solicit responses for energy conservation measures. We'll explain more about that. We'll explain what Mr. McKinney's role would be in that. I don't want to steal Mr. McKinney's thunder right now, but there is no fee associated with that. Hence the reason I'm not asking for action on this, because it's no cost to Lebanon Community School Corporation. So again, he's going to present his results here. I've had these since about October, knowing Mr. Havlin would come on board. I didn't see a reason to bring Mr. McKinney in November or December, knowing that a new board member would come on. I did want you to be present so you could ask these questions. And with that, Bob, if you'd like to go ahead and take it over, I hope that's a good enough introduction.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Dennis. It's good to see you all again. Mr. Havlin, nice to meet you. Quick reminder on Stratalign. We are an owner's rep energy solutions firm. We are the only one of those in the state of Indiana. I want to make it clear, it's typically not clear to our clients. We are not seeking to do projects for clients. We are an engineering firm that helps our clients understand how they're utilizing energy and where there are potential efficiencies, how they could tackle those efficiencies through energy conservation measures. We then move into the RFP phase. We manage the RFP. We set the standards for the respondents. Our engineers work with their engineering teams to provide firm responses to our clients. And if at that time the client elects to move forward, we can serve as their construction manager. But again, our hope from the feasibility study that was delivered is that whenever you're making upgrades to your facilities or changing out equipment, you utilize that data to help lower your energy costs. We are located here in Indianapolis. I've been working with school corporations since 2012. Stratalign has been in existence since 2018. Again, we shifted to being a single source for owners. No construction is performed by our company. We do invite qualified service providers into our projects, and we're procurement agnostic. We work with boards that prefer to go through the guaranteed energy savings route. Having us on board assures that the savings that are being calculated are actual real savings that impact your operating budget. They're not stipulated, they're not operational, they're actually energy savings, and so you're spending less on the energy you're purchasing. We also work with boards that prefer to go the tried and true plan and spec public procurement. Because we've written the standards and the scope, you would receive the same project. So I would say about 70% of our projects are guaranteed energy savings, and 20% typical procurement, public works procurement, and the balance being design and build. And we'll work with any method. Since 2018, we've been involved in projects that have saved our clients, and we also work in the private sector, over $125 million in energy savings. And equally as important, through our process, we've helped our clients reduce their upfront construction costs by over $3.5 million in that time frame. So real quick, just to touch on, again, on our approach, these are our 3 pillars of success. They do not need to be done one after the other. The time frame is driven by the client's budget. Again, in June, we were authorized to move forward with a feasibility study that we delivered to Mr. Dennis in October. Based on that information, we're going to talk about the 3 short-term themes that emerged from our findings, as well as some long-term themes. Again, every facility has assets. At some point, they're at the end of their useful life, so we did put together a plan for those whenever they would need to be replaced. We are recommending, based on those, that the school
test our thesis and see how competitive and accurate energy savings would be through an RFP process. But I do want to jump into what we were hired to do for you guys, which was this feasibility study. So we evaluated all of your school facilities and your administration building. We also took a look at the facilities that are under construction. We looked at the specifications of those facilities. We toured the actual physical assets. We looked at the specs on anything that would be consuming energy. We will update those once those are operational and we're actually seeing how they operate, but we wanted to at least share that information that we were able to glean from your plans and specifications. Three themes emerged when we were performing this study, and these are not super unique. Having an insight into how energy is being used in a facility has tremendous impact on your ability to reduce the use of that energy. There are softwares out there. Again, we're agnostic, but we've seen several that have been in use. One of them is virtual energy management. There are a number of others that our clients are using. They all do the same thing. They help a client eliminate energy overhead, which is energy that's being used when it does not need to be used. And the second thing the software does is it helps maximize the grid efficiency. So on any rate tariff, you're charged various rates depending on when you use the energy and how you use the energy. The software helps maximize the efficiency, which actually lowers your per unit cost of energy. So you're eliminating waste and you're lowering the cost. It's a fairly low-hanging fruit. LED lighting used to be the lowest hanging fruit. Most folks have replaced all their lights with LED lighting. Virtual energy management falls in that sub 3-year payback. It's not an expensive investment. There is some training required on the system, but in working with your team, your facilities team is phenomenal. They've been very responsive to our team. We were able to really take deep dives into your control systems. So you guys are utilizing the systems you do have. We did feel a virtual energy management that overlays over your current systems would help provide the quickest payback and easiest mechanism to reduce energy costs. The second item that stood out to us was, like all facilities, you're operating with HVAC systems that typically are not engineered to handle the load that they're currently handling. Classroom sizes have gotten larger, controls get tampered with just during the course of time. Pieces of the HVAC system fail, and so a control may not be able to communicate with certain pieces of it. So an easy example was an outside air damper could be left open in the winter, and it could cost you quite a bit of money during cold weather months like this. So what we recognized in our exploration of your mechanical equipment was a retro commissioning could be done on all of your aged systems. A retro commissioning is a pre-functional testing, which is how is the equipment at the base level operating? All your actuators, all your fans, all your dampers, all your motors, and then a functional testing. How are those pieces communicating with your controls? And we found there's some opportunity there to clean that up. Mr. Dennis did point out that you are under contract with a firm to manage your control systems. This is separate. They are managing the functionality of those systems. We're taking a deeper dive and looking at how your actual physical HVAC system is working with your controls. Again, that's about a 5.5-year payback, and that's what we typically see for that energy conservation measure. And then the third piece, there are some of your facilities that could benefit from an investment into solar energy. You switched about 2 years ago to a different rate tariff. This rate tariff is a blend tariff where you're paying for energy use, kWh, and then for demand use. Solar is not super predictable for demand, so that's why you're seeing a little greater than a 12-year payback on the solar investment. If it were a straight kWh use, you would see a significantly less payback. I say that when you look at the levelized cost of energy, what you pay per kilowatt hour, including all maintenance of a solar asset, for example. Solar would be a lower cost today versus what you're paying, and you can freeze that cost. So solar can be a hedge. Solar has been around. I've never seen it get more expensive long-term. Tariffs do have short-term impacts. We've been dealing with tariffs for a long time. This isn't new in our industry. So by no means would one need to jump in and do all the solar at once. Frankly, we recommend to our clients that they test maybe their worst performing asset with solar to see how it works for them in their community. So it is not an all or nothing proposition with solar energy. And then the third piece, or fourth piece, was the long-term goals. And in the report, we gave you guys a summary version, which highlights everything, and then the longer version goes into much more detail. We took a look at all of your assets, and when they reach the end of their useful life, which some are coming up, it was sort of like a 3 to 10 year plan. We've made recommendations on scope and then process for replacement of those to maximize your energy efficiency. This here is so energy use intensity, EUI, is quite simply the energy per square foot that a building is utilizing. The orange line up here is the industry or national average EUI for similar buildings. So for school buildings, let's say we're not including your admin building there. That would be a different baseline. And as you can see, some of your facilities, the current Central Elementary is actually fairly efficient. Hattie B is your worst performer currently. Its EUI is about 100. The national average is less than half of that, about 48 and a half. And then we just show with the energy conservation measures in green would just be the first two that we shared, virtual energy management and retro commissioning. And then the blue, the light blue, is if you added solar. So as you can see in each one, we're stepping down. What I don't want the room to worry about is that all of your buildings are above. That is a national average. In Indiana, it's not uncommon to see buildings between 48 and 60. It's pretty common. We have longer, colder winters than the average. So while that orange line isn't an ideal, and we feel we can get some of your buildings below it, the important thing is just to bring that trend down. I just really quickly wanted to share that virtual energy management. What it is it's a meter that is placed on your feet, both gas and electric. And it's a pulse meter that's reading energy use at the quarter-second interval. Because of how quickly it's reading energy, we can determine what equipment is turning on and off at what times, which helps us reduce energy overhead and maximize the grid efficiency. This is internet-based, so there will be physical equipment that's installed, but the platform is customer-facing. Companies that install this all include, and the pricing includes, assistance over the course of the first year to get staff trained, to send reminders. Like anything, it's not you turn it on and you reduce your energy cost 15%. It's a stepped approach over the first year to get you down to where we believe we can be. We modeled 10% in our findings. I have yet to have a client that's been less than 20%. It still provided a significant payback at a 10% reduction. This is just an example of solar energy. And we picked Harney again. It was a high energy use facility. We were provided with your roof studies and roof reports. We also evaluated the roofs. The reason the entire roof system is not covered, and it could be, is some of those roofs are older than 7 years of age. Solar will last a long time. You don't want to put it on an old roof and then take it down to re-roof and then put it back on. Another thing I wanted to note, it's a common question on solar with roofs, is are we penetrating the roofs with the solar installation? Those are ballasted racking systems, meaning there's no penetration to the roof. No contractor would penetrate the roof structure. And all contractors would have to work with your current roofing installer and manufacturer to maintain all the warranties you have. It would be a requirement of the RFP. So real quick on the RFP, we are going to use the information that we learned in our feasibility study. We are going to write the scope for an RFP. We don't want to limit the respondents, so we do provide an opportunity for them to share what they may learn that we may not have. One of the things that we've left open for analysis is you are paying a lot on your demand rate for energy, your KW rate. And there are some other ECMs that could lower demand, and we're going to explore those. Some of your heating systems would allow for what's called a combined heat and power, which is a generator that will generate electricity to lower your electricity costs and give you free heat. We're going to evaluate that during the RFP process. That may be something that we didn't share today that would be shared in the RFP. The beauty of it is you're going to receive information, again, that's going to inform you on how you may want to move forward now or in the future. You can select all of ECMs that are put forward or none. Again, it's as I said to Mr. Dennis, it's free information. You've paid for a feasibility study. It includes, if we have findings that warrant further exploration in RFP, let's continue to learn and see what the school may benefit from. And we're acutely aware of the school's financial duress and timing and competition for dollars. So again, you may need to address your operating fund sooner rather than later. But this is just information for you guys to make long-term decisions with. So again, just want to emphasize we are owner aligned. Our results are all engineered. Everything we are putting out for the RFP is fact-based, and all of our clients' projects are verified on an annual basis. We verify that the actual project saved money as it was engineered. Real quick, I don't need to spend much time on this. There are three problems facing all of our clients, and schools make up a majority of our client base. Short-term utility rates have skyrocketed. There is mounting pressure on schools' operating funds, and construction projects have seen inflation over the last 3 years that we have never seen before. So how can we help? Here's a graph through 2022 of the public utility rates in Indiana. It's a 90% increase, which seems like a lot, but that's over an almost 20-year period. If we look at, I'm picking on NIPSCO here only because they've had some significant rate increases approved recently. This is from 23, where that prior graph ended, through approved rate increases in 25. They will almost double again. They'll go up 75% in 2 short years. And I want to be clear, utilities are having to do this because there's three primary reasons. They're shuttering their coal-fired generated plants. They are trying to keep up with the demand for the electrification of the vehicle fleets across the nation. And data centers are driving new investment for these utility companies, so ratepayers have to pay for it. They get a bad rap, and they should not be able to approve increases like we see up here, but there are reasons behind it that we all have to deal with. This is an interesting slide, and so I apologize. It's kind of hard to read the school names on the bottom, but what we're showing here is about a dozen schools, transportation, utilities, which is in the green, and insurance costs as a percent of the school's net levy. And as you can see, some of the schools are already above that percent of, one school's at 192%. Others, are in the 60s and 70% range. The point here is all three of those buckets continue to grow, and we feel we can help schools impact the utility piece of that pie and free up operational dollars in that particular bucket. And this is an actual case study for a commercial client of ours. It's not a sales pitch. I just want to share real numbers that they've allowed us to put out. This company, or this client, had an energy savings contractor, legit one, give them a quote to reduce their energy costs. We were brought in afterwards to perform a feasibility study. We were able to develop various ECMs that the original contractor did not contemplate for a lower cost. So we went in and we were able to help them get about a $200,000 lower upfront cost, yet a $3.8 million versus $3.5 million benefit in energy savings by introducing energy conservation measures the other company didn't contemplate. So the net benefit to our client was about a $500,000 increased net benefit on a $1.7 million investment. I share that because the devil's in the details, and this study that was done by McKinsey & Co. is very true. Energy contracts contain about 30% hidden costs, whether it's upfront costs or inflated savings or improperly engineered savings. We feel like having a seat at the table with our partners allows them to avoid costly mistakes. Proofs in the pudding. It's very rare, but I wanted to share it. This client at Wayne Township in their Richmond Center, their average utility bill is about $2,500 a month, electric utility. They have, for the last 2 years, 1.5 years, only paid a customer charge every month. We've net zeroed their building through various ECMs, including solar. So they truly have saved about $30,000 a year in their operating fund from that one facility alone. So, good engineering, good planning, good understanding of the utility companies, it can affect in a positive way. That's it. You're welcome to take any questions or.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. McKinney or Mr. Dennis, I guess? Either one.
If we do this implementation, where's the money coming from?
So I'm glad you asked. So Bob mentioned two procurement situations for the money. One is the state statute, the Guaranteed Energy Savings Statute, which I'm not completely familiar with, and you can speak to. Certainly we can talk about that if the board prefers. Where I would recommend that the board would pay for this would be through the issuance of general obligation bonds and purchase these assets. Again, I'm not as familiar with the Guaranteed Energy Savings Statute and how that financing comes. I believe that is financed through your savings, is how those are paid back at times.
You can also use bonds as well.
Sure.
Which, for affecting your operating budget, would be a preferred route.
Correct. So that's the preference here, and the whole goal is to provide relief to the operations fund through the purchase of an asset. In this case, the virtual energy management, the retro commissioning services that are done, and then any repairs that would be done in the mechanical system. And then, as Bob said, what's unique about this process compared to, I think, what we're used to on the construction side with all the construction we've done is rather than taking out a set of specs to a general contractor and saying, this is what we want to build, how much does it cost to build this? This is truly what we're asking our students to do in STEM class every day. While Bob's company has said this is what some folks may do, solar here, virtual energy management here, when you put this out on the street to contractors for energy management, their engineers completely design it for you, and they may see something that Stratalign did not see at all. And then it's not necessarily bringing back the least or lowest responsible bidder. It's, okay, which one of these do we want to do, if any at all? And so it's a bit unique in that way. And then if we were to proceed, Bob would serve as the Meyer Najum, if you will, of our energy project. So he would be the construction manager of our energy project. But it's not the same as drawing up a set of prints and having people bid on that scope. It's giving all the information that Bob's team harvested from us to companies that do this day in and day out, and they turn their engineers loose and say, this is what I see you being able to capitalize on with your unique situation. Again, Bob brought up Wayne Township. For demand shaving at Wayne Township, there are batteries sitting outside of Ben Davis High School that deploy in times of high need so that a new demand peak isn't set. Bob's feasibility study didn't mention a thing about batteries on site. I would imagine if we RFP this thing, at least one contractor will come back with some type of batteries on site for demand shaving purposes, which he hasn't even factored in. Again, the goal with all this here is we know that year over year, property tax revenue is going to be a source of contention that's placed on schools. That's just fact with the trends of legislation in the past 2 budget sessions. This is to reduce spend in the operations fund as a response to lagging revenue, quite honestly. So, long-winded answer to your question there, Mr. Clauser. It would be through the procurement of bonds.
Yeah, the guaranteed energy savings contract's always, how do you actually guarantee something that doesn't happen?
So I think that's where the verification.
And then later on say, well, yeah, we proved that this didn't happen. I mean, you don't know. So I think it's good to be looking at every building and trying to make sure we are, dotting our I's, crossing our T's, trying to reduce use in our operations costs. Absolutely. The guaranteed energy savings always seem kind of like, I hate to say it, but like snake oil to me. It just seemed to be, we're guaranteeing you something that you have no way to prove. It's so hard.
That was the thesis behind why we started Stratton, you're right. But it can be done right, and very limited. I saw it for 10 years in the marketplace, and the statute allows people to be creative and do what is called stipulated savings, and which is a calculation that you agree to. It has nothing to do with reality. And what I'm saying is we don't count it. All we're looking at is real energy savings, and then we're ongoing monitoring and verifying it. And then the contractors have to place a bond on their savings. So if they ever went out of business and they missed and couldn't write you a check, that bond company would have to step in and sue them and write you the check. So we do try to ensure the savings. But you're right. But that's our job, is to point out what's BS, and we don't allow it in our responses. These guys we're not going to ask for operational savings or any of that. You have to be very careful with that.
Any other questions or comments?
Can you give any insight as to why, and I know you said don't worry about it, but I'm going to worry about it anyways, but in terms of why our rates are so high at like Hattie B? Like, do we know why we're so much higher than the national average, even if it's not uncommon to see 40 to 60 or 45 to 65, whatever you said, but we're rocking at 100 on the benchmark highlights page that you were talking about.
Yes, our engineers' feedback on that was, and it really was present in every building. It touches on the retro commissioning. Some of your HVAC systems elements are not communicating with your controls, and so a system, in layman's terms, a system that should be turned back right now in Hattie B could be running at full bore. A outside air damper, which you have to bring in so much outside air to have CO2 levels at an appropriate level, as well as control humidification. It could be stuck at 100% open right now, and it's 10 degrees out. And so you're spending $400 a day in gas you don't need to be.
And that's why that post-solar number even looks high, even in this chart, because that doesn't necessarily consider some of those fixes, or?
No, it does consider, so even after those fixes, when we step down, it could be building envelope. The age of the roof and the insulation value of that roof could be damaged. It could be wet insulation on the old roof. The windows may not be as energy efficient as some of your other buildings.
Bob, I'll step into Mr. Clauser, and just because we talked about this very building today, Hattie B. Stokes has 14-foot high ceilings, which means we're conditioning 14 linear feet in the air, completely unstandard for an elementary school. No one on this board or in this administration was present when Hattie B. Stokes was designed, but we are conditioning, we'll put it this, conversely, when you go to Harney, Perry Worth, those ceilings are brought down to 9 feet. You only have to condition 9 feet. So it does not surprise me that Hattie B. Stokes comes in as our least efficient building when that building functions as essentially a middle school when you look at the dimensions of that building.
Right, because and that's kind of the gist of what I'm getting at here is like, why is Hattie B so bad? Like, and what else can we be doing even with the solar? It's still going to be high. So, is that just a symptom of a bigger problem? And I know that's kind of part of what your this process is about, but I just don't want to spend what, 11 million across 3 projects, 11.5 across 3 projects if we're not solving some of our more fundamental problems.
So I guess in terms of thinking of solving a problem, while we may not solve it, and it may not be correct to think about solving a problem, it's making a problem better than it currently is. I think is where I would be there when we're looking for any savings at all that we can capture. And again, the 11.5 is if we choose to do everything.
Sure,
Again, that
yeah.
solar is going to be your most expensive component. And again, I love the idea of market testing it at maybe just one building to see how we're doing. But certainly some of the least expensive options. Any savings, if we can save $100,000, $200,000 a year in the operations fund on a budget of our size, that's 3 people. That's hedging against a rate increase for electric. That's just providing that. So I get it. I struggle too with the fact that we own a building, Hattie B. Stokes, that it just seems to be stubborn when it comes to energy utilization. But again, that is just a big, tall building that I wish they'd put the ceilings about 6 feet lower.
And on the virtual energy management systems, that software that our current staff can implement, we're not going to be looking at needing to hire anybody from a time perspective to manage that or anything?
Good question, you would not.
Okay.
In a lot of ways, it may simplify some of the work they do.
The one that's really more concerning to me is the new central.
I didn't want to talk about that.
And guys, please,
Yeah.
our engineer took the plans and specs and ran it through a model, so I should have qualified, that's a paper audit based on plans and specs. It's not in the built world. We will test it once it's done and just verify how efficient it is. I hope it's more efficient than that. We're a pretty conservative group, so, yeah, but don't scream at your contractor. I think they're doing a good job.
So I was just going to say, so essentially, I kind of preface Bob starting with this is, my position is, seeing what the market has available for us, it's at no cost to us. Bob, you mind sharing the appetite for work out there right now, this type of work?
Yeah, so we keep tabs with the contractors that have done well on our projects, and there are years when we really beg and plead to get 2 people to compete because they're all busy. And I was sharing with Mr. Dennis last week, there are a handful of really good contractors that are asking us, when's your next project? So we believe for your particular project, there will be good competition. Brewer Garrett, Verigy, ESG, and there may be others. Those 3 have reached out to us last month just to kind of get a feeler for what we have coming. And again, per Zach's comments, and then I'll stop, our expectation when we come up and deliver the findings from the RFP is you will have multiple energy conservation measures. These are firm prices. They can't change them on you. For you guys to make a decision from. You can choose 1, none, all. My hope is we have greater than the 3 we've shared with you, and something resonates to help your operating budget.
Anything else? Thank you, Mr. McKinney,
Thank
for
you,
the
thank you.
information. All right, we're moving on to consent agenda staff matters.
Thank you very much. Under our classified consent agenda this evening, asking for approval of new hires 9:30 through 9:33, 9:34, check that. Resignations 9:35 through 9:39, retirement number 940 and number 941, termination number 942, and resignation 943, and transfers 944 and 945. Under certified staff this evening, new hires 261 through 263, resignation 264, a retirement 265, and a temporary position number 266. In our ECAs this evening, we have a full slate of coaches that I will not read the numbers of, but it's our that annual time to look through our hires, resignations, and volunteer coaches for various athletic positions this evening.
Okay, any questions about those? Can we take them all in one?
Yeah, you can take them all.
Right, can I have a motion to accept the classified, certified, and ECA staff positions as mentioned?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Clauser. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Hendricks. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, thank you. Now we're moving on.
I'll take a moment to.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Yes.
Take a moment to just recognize, as the board approved of the retirement of Pam Davis, our current assistant principal at Harney Elementary. Pam has been a valued employee and administrator in our district for many years. She served Hattie B. Stokes as well as Harney as assistant principal. We wish her well on her retirement, and we'll be moving forward this week on filling those positions or that position, and speaking to the staff about that. But we just want to take a moment and thank her for her many years of service to our students and families here in the district. And also, with the board's approval this evening, we have hired our first, well, at least for many decades, our first special education director for the district. As you know, we've completed the separation with joint services, and we'll be bringing special education administration in-house, if you will, for Lebanon schools. So congratulations to Mr. Chad Salzman, who is here with us this evening, and congratulate him on that. And also share with the board that in our design for our new central office space, there's a suite of offices for special education, administrative assistant for that. This position will be part of the central office leadership team. As you know, that's the group that includes our assistant superintendents and directors that meets weekly with my office to kind of direct the leadership of the buildings and of the program. So having that special education seat at the table on that weekly basis and part of our offices just will streamline that communication. I know he's anxious to get started, but we're also certainly thankful for the leadership Joint Services has provided. We thank Madeline Sandberg for her time as director in leading that and helping us grow that program and lead that program. And we wish her well, as last Monday she was appointed as the new director for Western Boone Special Education. So we certainly wish her well in that endeavor, and in the next few months she's pledged to help the transition with our new director, and there'll be some logistics around that. In the meantime, we do have a current lease for joint services that we will be assuming. So we're going to maintain that office for time being. We're, as you know, under construction, so we're going to keep that space rolling and have a space for our director starting in June as we make that transition. So congratulations, Mr. Salman. Anything you'd like to say on your behalf and vision or things on your mind? That's it. So we're looking forward to it. So congratulations. We'll be making that announcement here in the next 2 days. So I wanted to make sure to recognize him and his efforts, and we're looking forward to his leadership.
Congratulations. Now we will move on to business matters, financial update. Mr. Dennis.
Thank you, Mrs. Hutchison. Provided, as always, is our financial update for the month. Call your attention to salaries. I always like to point out when we have a 3-pay month because it looks gaudy compared to the previous year, but 3-pay month in 2025, just a 2-pay month in 2024. Projected year of performance in the following page, and any questions on that, happy to answer before reading the claims.
Any questions? All right.
All right, then I would appreciate your approval of our claims for this period, which would be 2 payrolls, January 31st and 3 payrolls, February 7th and February 14th. Total amount $2,292,699.39. Claims for the period $3,239,568.15 for a total of the two $5,532,267.54.
Any questions on the claims docket. Can I have a motion to approve the claims as read?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Clauser. A second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Parks. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, thank you. Do we have anyone signed up from the public? Okay. All right, Mr. Dennis, it's you again. Change orders.
Thank you, Mrs. Hutchison. Fairly benign month in terms of change orders. However, I do want to call the board's attention. If you look at Perry Worth, the first change order I have mentioned, fairly decent credit. This is the first time we've closed out a contract on any of our construction projects. So if you'll recall, the elementary schools, they all had allowance built into the contract. Basically, on bid day, we told bidders to increase their bid by a specific amount. I will say Central Restaurant is our food service equipment provider, which is going to be the lowest allowance we ask someone to carry, probably $70,000, maybe even $50,000, what we ask them to carry. Should they make it through the project and we don't have a need to utilize that, they owe us that amount back. I will say that while it is reducing the new budget number there, the number at the very top in the far right-hand corner of Perry Worth Elementary, the $576,000 number, that number won't change because of that. I've always carried the allowance and contingency both in that box, so when we get the allowance back, it just simply moves to contingency, so that number doesn't change. But that number is now contractually released to us. We are not obligated to spend that $14,000. And we're going to get to a point here in the next few months where we're starting to close out a lot of contracts, and we start to realize that we have some monies that have been left over and returned to us from allowances where we may want to pursue some of the items that we originally did not pursue to protect the budget that were maybe more along the needs of some pretty high wants as opposed to necessities. And those I'll be bringing to the board. We have begun to identify some things that will help us operationally year over year. We're not going to frivolously spend dollars here. When I say wants, please don't think of that as gold-plated toilets. That's not what I'm referring to here. It's more things that will help us operationally year over year that weren't a need early on. To have a school building, to have an elementary school building, but they may be something that we desire to have now that we have some money coming back. See that $20,000, that's a seal coat that was performed over the summer. Need to get that change order performed. We would have done that anyway, so it was great to do that as part of the project. Again, the rest of this is pretty benign, a credit and deduct at the New Central Elementary, and then a small correction to the fire suppression design at the transportation facility. So any questions the board may have, happy to answer those. Otherwise, appreciate your consideration and approval of those change orders.
Any questions for Mr. Dennis? Can I have a motion for the February approval of change orders as presented?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Parks. A second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Havlin. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, thank you. Mr. Dennis, the fund transfers.
Thank you. Standard procedure that we do at the end of every fiscal year. In fact, this will wrap up the 2024 fiscal year for us. This is just the movement of dollars left over in certain account lines to other account lines that were overspent. Again, no fund was overspent. These are just individual account lines in the fund. We do this every year, just an approval that we need to get through for audit purposes.
All right. Can I have a motion to approve the 2024 fund transfers as presented?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Hendricks. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Clauser. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, thank you. And Mr. Dennis, Harney parking lot improvements.
Thank you. Final, as far as I know, can't think of any other, but final construction bid to award for elementary renovations. This is to redo the parking lots at Harney Elementary. Always knew that we would be doing this. However, as asphalt is made of oil and is a commodity, we chose not to bid this work that would be done in the summer of 2025 in the fall of 2023. So what this bid represents is the elevation of Harney's north lot. That is the lot that our drive line is. We did have to raise Harney where the new gym went, so we do have to add about 12 inches of stone to create a new base. That stone will be placed upon a cement stabilized subgrade. So we have cement stabilized all of our subgrade in the corporation due to the wet nature of Lebanon dirt. this provides an asset that lasts much longer than a non-stabilized subgrade on a parking lot. But also the parking lot on the other side of Harney, the old bus loop, which is where visitors may come in now, that is in dire need of repair as well. So we did have quite a bit of participation on this. However, I am bringing to you this evening, I will say that we were holding $1 million for this when we budgeted this. So if you were to go back to the change orders, you would notice the contingency amount for Harney increased significantly from last meeting. That is due to the roughly $412,000 that has now been released that we were holding for this particular project. But with that being said, I will go ahead and read the winning bidder was Howard Companies, and their bid was in the amount of $588,596.45. So would appreciate the board's approval of that contract to finish up the asphalt parking lots at Harney.
Any questions for Mr. Dennis?
You are going to earn the honorary PE by then.
I did a good job with that cement stabilization.
Yeah. I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Parks. Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. Mr. Dennis, authority to sign on behalf of the board for AT&T and City of Lebanon easement.
Yeah, I think Mr. Parks and I can sort of work together to explain this to the board, but essentially asking for the board's authority to sign an easement when it's prepared. We have some pretty timely easement documents that need to be signed in order to meet our construction schedule for the high school activity center, namely with AT&T. AT&T was granted an easement that runs pretty much right through our property where we need to build this activity center. That was granted back in 1996, and that was the telecom line that Ameritech at that time, Mr. Hendricks probably doesn't remember Ameritech, but everybody else probably does.
I was 3.
Sure.
Let's just make sure that's on the docket.
So the superintendent and board at the time granted an easement that has served AT&T well. That contains 48 fiber lines, 48 strands of fiber, and that is servicing internet for people. It is not servicing us, but nonetheless, they do hold easement to that, and we need to put a building on top of that, and that is going to be fairly timely. So I think that needs to happen before the March board meeting. So I'm asking the board's permission to authorize me to sign on behalf of the board to get that documentation through. AT&T, they don't do anything on handshakes. They want executed documents to get things through. So Mr. Parks, if you have anything more to add to this.
No, and I know the question's always, why wasn't this found before identified? Because title searches are typically done 20 years, and that was well beyond that. So, but this will be, it will be defined once, we'll run the actual language through our council, but then when it'll define the actual, what I call the legal description, parcel plat legal description that will accompany that. Once it's completed and
And Mr. Parks, do you think there's any need in addition to is there anything else that will need to be signed as far as the drain? I spoke with Mr. Franson today, and he thinks with the county drainage board's action today, I don't know if there's.
The drainage board turned it over to the city, right?
Yes.
And then us working with the city, I don't believe.
Is there anything to sign? I don't know if you need to authorize me to sign anything for the city in the meantime as well?
I don't believe so.
Okay, so just
some modifications in storm sewer too that runs adjacent, underneath the canopy.
Okay.
Yeah, so no, I don't see anything.
So it'll just be an AT&T easement then that I'll be
There'll
signing.
be a change order later on, I'm sure, but.
I should get a credit back with no more carrier pipe.
Yeah.
That should be something.
Yeah.
Can I have a motion to grant Mr. Dennis authority to sign on our behalf for the AT&T easement? Thank you, Mr. Havlin. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Hendricks. All in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Thank you. You are able to sign on our behalf.
Thank you.
Now on to bus purchases, Mr. Dennis.
Thank you. Bringing to the board this evening our annual bus purchase recall that we do this through cooperative purchasing, so we run all of our school bus purchases through CISC. They handle all of the public bidding and the requirement. These are obviously, big dollar amount assets, and purchasing laws are certainly valid when you purchase buses, but that is handled through the cooperative purchasing procurement method. What I will say to the board is that we generally find that the bus that we prefer to purchase, and we don't purchase the cheapest bus every year because there is efficiency in having a fleet of the same buses. You're stocking the same bolts, the same washers, the same starters. I'm mentioning just car parts that I'm aware of. I'm sure we don't change these things that often, but nonetheless, these things are proprietary, and what goes on a Collins bus doesn't go on a Bluebird bus. So with that said, you will notice that the Thomas bus is the cheapest bus that you could buy this particular year. What I will say is normally Bluebird is the cheapest. It just, they don't happen to be this year for whatever reason. So communicating to the board and asking the board's permission to purchase a bus that's $12,000 more, that's for 3, by the way, so it's really $4,000 more per bus. But again, this is an efficiency item so that we don't have to stock different parts. So I did just want to get that in the minutes, that we are purchasing what wasn't the least expensive bus, but for efficiency reasons and really hardship reasons, we feel that it's worth spending the $4,000 extra per bus. So asking the board's permission for the purchase and procurement of Bluebird buses.
Any questions about the buses?
Are these replacement buses?
Yes, so every year we replace between 3 to 5 once they get to 12 years of age. We don't have to get rid of them when they're 12 years of age. In fact, we'll hold some back. Some buses don't start some days, and so we do have to hold about 20% back in spares. The buses that we will be replacing, we desire to move on from those buses and move forward. So yes, not new buses, simply replacing part of the fleet.
Any other questions? Can I have a motion to purchase the 2 78-passenger buses and the 2 white activity buses as presented? Was that you, Mr. Parks? Thank you. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Havlin. All in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? All right. Thank you, Mr. Dennis. Dr. Milliman, the second reading of Policy 8120.
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Hutchison. This is for second reading and action this evening. We talked about this at our previous board meeting. This is a change in our background check procedures for volunteers. So upon approval of this new revised policy, we'll be requiring all volunteers to complete an expanded background check. This is something that would require a bit of a financial commitment for each of our volunteers to complete. However, it would be good for 3 years, so it would be spread out over those 3 years. It does contain some language in there as well. The volunteers need to make us aware of any arrests or charges within that 3-year period of time. And we believe this will be more efficient, more thorough. We will be electing to require volunteers to complete a check that will now include a federal sex offender registry. And I'm not sure I'm going to get the wording right. Mr. Clauser can help me, but it's a national offense or a conviction registry as well. So it is a couple dollars more, literally, than maybe what some of our neighbors charge, but it gives us a more thorough and in-depth background check. This will not change our visitors policy. That's still, when they come to the counter, we do run the driver's licenses for our visitors, which does include the sex offender registry and things of that nature. So Mr. Parks comes to speak to our STEM class about engineering. He'd be required to do the visitor the same way, but this is for our volunteers throughout our district. Might volunteer in the classroom, volunteer with our performing arts, etc. So happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank Mrs. Hutchison and Mr. Clauser for their help in revising this.
What is the communication plan to let everyone know that this change will be
Right.
coming.
So this SPY policy would go into effect July 1, so that does give us time to kind of on-ramp this into the next school year. However, we're going to be, board approves this, we will be testing it. We want to do some testing within our office. We'll be taking some of the communication that our buildings do as part of this process and bringing it into central office, so taking that burden off of our buildings. So we're going to ask for some volunteers to do the volunteer background check and get this rolling. One, Natalie Parks perhaps, might be one of those that we'll be reaching out to, and make sure we run it through with our office, make sure that's running smoothly, make sure we have all of our databases set up and access. Our building secretaries, building principals will have access to this information, not offenses and charges, only whether it's been approved, denied, or whether it's pending. So they'll be able to see the status, but they won't be able to see information about the applicant. Another efficiency in this is if there are no charges, there's no issues whatsoever, it's an automatic approval process. And because it's going through the same system that we use for our employees, the volunteer will get an email saying you're approved. So that will take care of the communication for us. So this is going to be much more efficient as well as thorough. So once we test it, I'd like to say that by May, somewhere in that time frame, we may be able to roll it out to our families and say, hey, if you're going to volunteer next school year, let's go ahead and get this going. It's a 3-year, it's going to be good for 3 years, so we can have a month of communication with our families. But we'd like to try some things in-house, make sure that we know how this is going to work. So that last month of school is where we'll really kind of roll this information out.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions about the volunteer policy?
Have you had any other communications from anybody as this has been proposed?
No, not from any of our public presentations. We have from the administrative team, and we'll be talking about that tomorrow. We have an admin meeting with our principals tomorrow. So most of our questions have come from in-house. How's this going to work? What's the logistics going to look like? And we keep answering those questions. So we'll have some questions tomorrow, I'm sure, from our team.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. If there are no more questions, can I get a motion to approve the second reading of policy 8120?
All motion.
Thank you, Mr. Hendricks. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, thank you. Mr. Martin, LHS DECA overnight trip.
So DECA has requested an overnight trip Monday, March 3rd and Tuesday, March 4th for state competition. And that has been proposed in detail to you. Anybody have any questions on that?
No? All right, looks exciting. Can I get a motion to approve the overnight DECA state competition trip?
I'll make a motion.
Is that Mr. Haviland? Thank you. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Hendricks. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right. Our next meeting is March 18th here in this room. We hope to see everyone there. And we have a spring break coming up soon, don't we?
Another month or so.
All right. Hopefully we can make it till then.
Doesn't feel like it today.